Look at this chilling video. Unverified but widely reported, it shows an object streaking upwards, stopped with a flash in the night sky. Flight 752 on fire. 63 Canadians would die.
Tonight, what seems to have happened in that instant is reverberating right here.
We have intelligence from multiple sources that the plane was shot down.
A stunning development in a week full of them. Already grieving Canadians confronting new emotions, confusion, anger.
Tonight, with so many questions for Canada, for Iran, we're seeking the answers, assessing the challenges ahead, remembering the devastating loss. Special coverage of Flight 752. This is The National.
Canada says it now has evidence suggesting the Iranian air crash that killed 176 people, including 63 Canadians, was caused by a missile strike.
Whether intentional or accidental, the Prime Minister said he wants answers. Tonight, what we've learned about the Flight 752 disaster, including the latest on those intelligence assessments, plus new video that may help tell the story. This unverified video posted by Iranian state television purports to show the moment of impact as seen from the ground. First, a blinding flash, followed by that violent storm of debris hurtling between buildings, a rain of fire.
Now, the scope of this tragedy had already left Canadians reeling. But Rosie, how the government responds is going to be a whole other issue.
And such a complicated issue, too, Andrew. I'm here again tonight in the West Block on Parliament Hill. Canada will be hard-pressed, to say the least, to get information from Iran, but that certainly isn't stopping the Prime Minister from asking.
In light of this new information, it is now more important than ever that we know exactly how such a tragedy could have happened.
But with no formal diplomatic relationship with Iran, Canada may struggle to get all the answers that it actually wants. And David Cochrane begins our detailed coverage tonight with more on the government's reaction and what it hopes to do.
The Prime Minister clearly believes he knows what happened. Now he wants to find out why.
The families of the victims and all Canadians want answers. I want answers. That means closure, transparency, accountability, and justice. And this government will not rest until we get that.
If this was in fact a mistake, it happened after a series of deliberate acts by the United States and Iran, which escalated tensions in the region. A U.S. drone strike killed an Iranian general, provoking an Iranian missile attack on U.S. and Canadian forces in Iraq. Civilians seemingly killed in the fallout.
I think it is too soon to be drawing conclusions or assigning blame or responsibility in whatever proportions. Right now, our focus is on supporting the families that are grieving right across the country.
No blame, not even for Iran, because Canada needs the cooperation of a potentially culpable nation. On that point, Trudeau spent hours huddling with top staff and speaking to world leaders, building support to pressure Iran to give access and answers.
I think if I were mourning a loved one today, I want to know what had happened, why it happened, and who was responsible. And I think an investigation must answer those three questions.
Canada will seek answer to these questions. With our allies, with the international community, the world want to know.
But does Iran want the world to know? Until that's answered, Trudeau isn't just Prime Minister, he's the Prime Consoler, trying to reassure grieving families as best he can.
Our focus right now is on giving immediate support to the families, working with them to ensure that the remains of their loved ones are brought home to Canada, if that is their wishes, and indeed move forward on a full and complete investigation.
David Cochran's here with me now. Okay, so the Prime Minister is asking for this full, complete access to the investigation in Iran. What are the chances that that's actually going to happen?
Okay, let's start with where things are right now. We know that consular officials are going to get into the country to provide consular services on the ground and help with body identification. Iran has assured us we're going to get visas for that. Okay. We know the Transportation Safety Board is going to get into the country and be allowed to visit the crash site. They've accepted an invitation from Iran to do that. But getting into the country and visiting the site is not the same thing as getting involved in the investigation. Sure. Right now, Canada has what essentially amounts to observer status in the investigation. They can see and hear what Iran wants it to see and hear. It's looking for more beyond that. That's what Canada has asked for. That is what Ukraine has asked for on Canada's behalf. But speaking with political sources, diplomatic sources, and experts about the region, they see that as highly unlikely because given the revelations and allegations of today, it's tough to see how that is in Iran's best interests.
Okay, great reporting. Thanks, David. Appreciate it. As you saw there in David's story, tonight the Prime Minister attended a vigil here on Parliament Hill, one of many being held across the country tonight for the victims of the air crash in Iran. At issue, we'll be here a little bit later with the politics and how the government has responded to this story.
Now, as you just heard, the Prime Minister referenced intelligence reports, some from the United States, but he did not elaborate. Our Susan Ormiston looks into what we know about them and the American response to this Canadian tragedy.
Flight 752 lit up the sky before it crashed early Wednesday. U.S. security sources say the U.S. saw Iranian radar signals lock onto the jetliner. In this newer video, a flash appears to show a missile strike. Data collected from satellite and radar was discovered Wednesday, say officials, analyzed and shared with Canada and the UK. The Pentagon has not commented. Iran's Civil Aviation Authority has repeatedly denied any missile strike, senior officials calling it anti-Iran propaganda stirred up by the U.S.
It's a tragic thing. But somebody could have made a mistake on the other side, could have made a mistake. It was flying. It was flying in not our system. No, it has nothing to do with us. Some people say it was mechanical. I personally don't think that's even a question.
The missile theory connects Canada's huge loss to the conflict this week between the U.S. and Iran.
It's awful what took place, but I don't think there's anything the United States could have done to specifically prevent this incident, aside from laying down and giving Qasem Soleimani free rein in the region, and it just wasn't prepared to do that.
In 2014, a Russian missile in Ukraine was blamed for bringing down MH17. Michael Borcherko was with an observer mission then. He sees parallels now.
Did we not learn anything from the crash of MH17? What on earth was that plane doing in the skies? It should have never have taken off when everyone was aware that it's an active conflict zone.
Deaths from a missile, intended or not, are touching off a blame game here. Already some Democrats saying these lives are the collateral damage of military escalation, provoking some angry rebukes from Republicans. Susan Ormiston, CBC News, Washington.
Now, while we can't say definitively that the plane was shot down, we do know Iran has considerable air defenses around the capital and the airport itself. Katie Nicholson got some expert insight into Iran's missile arsenal.
These bright flashes, what light might they shine on what happened 2 nights ago?
It's an inexcusable action on their part, in my view.
Ian Williams is an expert on Iran and its defense capabilities. What kind of a missile might have been involved?
The kind of air defense system that we're looking at that likely shot down this aircraft, we think is a Tor M1 system. This is a short-range missile system that fires about 12 kilometers.
How does a Tor M1 missile work?
Once it gets close enough to the target, it will detonate. It won't strike the target directly, and it will shower the aircraft with small pieces of shrapnel, which will tear holes in the aircraft, tear holes in the wings, and basically cause the aircraft to disintegrate in the air.
Why was the anti-aircraft system so close to a civilian airport?
They were, likely were at least anticipating some kind of U.S. response to their strike. They probably had these systems activated. There should be coordination between the military and the civil aviation authorities. I mean, and if you really were expecting to have to engage in air defense activity over the skies of Tehran that night, they should have grounded all civilian aircraft, cleared the airspace.
Iran denies it fired on the plane and today urged investigators to come view the black box. Can Iran be trusted?
The Iranians have a long experience with working with misleading investigators. This goes back to their nuclear program, to their missile programs. They have a penchant for doing this.
Canada will get a chance to see for itself how forthcoming Iran is if its investigators are allowed to do their work. Katie Nicholson, CBC News, Toronto.
Now, even when you hear the names and see the faces of the victims, it's hard to get a real sense of the scale of grief people are feeling. But what is plainly on display is compassion as communities mourn.
Everybody, is somehow affected.
In Toronto, a civic center was packed with those from within the Iranian community and beyond it. In Montreal, lights lit outside Concordia University for lives lost. At McMaster University in Hamilton, there was a quiet farewell for two friends who died in the crash. A mosque in Bedford, Nova Scotia, was filled with mourners, lending strength to a surviving husband.
Thank you so much for coming here. Thank you.
And at that vigil on Parliament Hill, amid the crowd's tender moments, so many on that flight made contributions to their community, brightened the lives of those around them, and they leave an impact that will last long after their deaths. One of those stories now from Ellen Morrow.
This was Zainab Asadi Lari's 21st birthday. It would be her last.
She was something so special. I just kept hoping she'd show up, And that's part of the denial, I guess.
These women were her best friends. Inseparable, they called themselves the Fantastic Four.
Now that she's not here, it's incomplete. We don't know how to go on without her.
I didn't tell her I love her enough, and I wish I had. And it's just I can never do it again.
She was a true friend, and she put she gave me hope that humanity is still present in the world.
The friends studied together at the University of Toronto. Asadi Lari was a star student, president of a university science fellowship. She wanted to be a doctor.
She was going to make such a huge difference with her advocacy for global health and public health and mental well-being. I'm immensely sad that she won't be able to pursue her dreams.
Those dreams ran in the family. Mohammed Asadi Lari, Zainab's big brother, also studying to be a doctor, was with her on the flight.
The last messages I sent to her was, have a safe flight. And I love you, I wish, I can't wait to see you. And she's like, yeah, I can't wait to see your beautiful face.
Now memories are their only comfort to quell the pain of a life lost too soon.
She deserved to have a midlife crisis and get married and have children and be a doctor, and knowing that it won't ever come true. It's not right. It's the injustice of it all.
That seeming injustice making this loss all the more painful. Ellen Morrow, CBC News, Toronto.
We're hearing stories like that one from across Canada. And Ian, you're in Edmonton, where people are sharing in that pain tonight.
Andrew, it has hit this province and especially the city so hard. CBC News has confirmed that more than a dozen Albertans were on that doomed flight, and most of them were from this city. Behind me is the legislature. The flag has been lowered to half-mast, and everyone that I've talked to in the city is feeling this tragedy, but for the Persian community, as one person told us, it's as if each member knows someone who was on that plane. Aaron Collins has the story of three women, a mother and two daughters, who shared a passion for helping others.
The snapshots capture moments of lives well lived, bright futures now cruelly snatched away.
This was her sister and her mom. Sarah's graduation.
Daniel Goetz Esfahani has lost the love of his life. He and Saba Sadat together for 3 years, now separated forever.
You know, anything I do reminds me of her. Like, I can't believe she's gone.
Shakufe Shupanajad was Saba's mother. She was a doctor committed to healing others at this Edmonton clinic.
I remember her as a friendship, as a colleague. I will not forget her, in my life. I will not forget her.
Both of her daughters, Saba and her sister Sara, wanted to follow in their mother's footsteps. Sara Sadat was in school to become a clinical psychologist. Saba wanted to become a medical doctor like her mother. She had already applied to go to medical school. While she waited to learn how to heal people, she was already committed to helping them, volunteering to help families in need with a local charity.
And she was trying to help them get above that poverty line and bring them back to their feet. So I think she has touched so many lives.
And doing medical research into women's health at the University of Alberta.
She would have been a rock star. So that girl would have, I don't know what she would have done, and I wish we all could have seen and benefited from her.
Their loss is felt more deeply by their loved ones, but it's one that leaves this city, this country, much poorer too.
It's very difficult to see that she's no longer here because, you know, they were all angels in my eyes.
So, Aaron, yesterday there was talk about maybe as many as 30 people from Edmonton on the plane. That number's changed a bit.
Yeah, it's really a fluid situation, as you can imagine, Ian. And the last day or so has really been about trying to determine how many people were just passing through Edmonton and how many people actually lived here.
And tell us more about the impact on the community.
It's huge. It's not a big community, Iranian community, Canadian community here in Edmonton. Mm-hmm. And like you said in the intro, pretty much everyone in that community knows somebody that was on that plane. That's why they're gathering. That's why they gathered last night at the legislature, and that's why they plan to gather again on Sunday at the University of Alberta, where so many of the people that were on that flight from here were connected.
A scene repeated in many places across the country. Thanks, Aaron. And now back to Toronto.
Okay, and we are following other news tonight as well, including the Queen's reaction to news that Prince Harry and Meghan are stepping aside.
And we have much more special coverage of Flight 752. In just 2 minutes, we'll take you to the airport in Kyiv, where the doomed flight was supposed to land. That is now the scene of an emotional memorial. But first, more of the names and faces of the many passengers being mourned here in Canada.
Most of the people on board Ukrainian Airlines Flight 752 were not Ukrainian, but the plane was heading to Ukraine's capital. Now, that country has declared a national day of mourning. And as in Canada, the demand there for answers grows stronger. Chris Brown is there.
Kyiv's airport, where the Ukrainian flight crew was based, has been the scene of much heartache. Ivan Hapachenko must have been here for half an hour in tears. His son Volodymyr was the pilot. He loved his work like he loved the sky, like I loved him, he told us. Earlier in the day, Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky was here as well, laying flowers before he addressed the nation. We will surely find out the truth, he promised. As relations with Iran are extremely poor, with most of those countries affected, including Canada, Ukraine's president is a key go-between. A team of 45 Ukrainian investigators arrived in Tehran overnight, including some who investigated the downing of Malaysia Airlines flight MH17 over eastern Ukraine almost 6 years ago. Overwhelmingly, the evidence in that incident pointed to a Russian Buk missile fired from the ground as what blasted the jet out of the sky, killing 298 people. But the belief now that this crash could again have been caused by a missile has put Zelensky in a difficult position because his teams on the ground require Iranian cooperation. Speaking at the UN, Ukraine's deputy foreign minister reiterated that Iran can't be allowed to hide anything.
Our experts must receive unconditional support for their investigation into the incident.
Among those we met here today was a woman who said she was friends with everyone on the flight crew. She said one flight attendant was 3 months pregnant, another was looking to start a family, and in her estimation, she believes the pilot of the plane was a hero because as it crashed, she says he would have steered the plane away from homes on the ground and saved many lives. Chris Brown, CBC News, Kyiv.
The idea of a passenger plane being shot down is not new. It has happened more than 30 times since the dawn of commercial aviation. The most recent MH17 brought down in that Ukrainian sunflower field in 2014. So Ukraine has experience coping with this and is sharing as much as possible with Canada. But Iran, too, knows what it's like. In 1988, an Iranian jetliner with 290 people on board was shot down by a U.S. missile. Canada is in no position to ask Iran about that experience. The two countries haven't had a formal relationship since 2012. So to get a window into the political workings in Iran and Canada's options now, we're turning to the last Canadian head of mission to Iran before Canada was expelled from Tehran. Dennis Horak, thank you for being here. You know Iran better than most. Will Canadians get the answers being demanded today?
I think it's very unlikely. The Iranians don't do transparency very well. Their default mode is to circle the wagons and not provide a lot of information, particularly if it was a shoot down, which does seem to be the case. Then you're going to get the security forces involved and they're going to want to clamp down on information. So I think it's unlikely.
So it's interesting to hear the Prime Minister talking about the list of things Canada wants: justice, accountability, transparency. What tools and leverage does Canada actually have, though, in terms of trying to get those answers?
We don't have a lot, to be perfectly honest. We have the international community is probably, I'm sure, all on board with us, especially in terms of things like consular access, but also in terms of the investigation. This is an investigation that has international implications. If, as the Iranians claim, that it's a mechanical failure, well, then Boeing and other airlines that run that aircraft need to know what happened. And if it's not, which it likely isn't, then we need to know what happened, how it happened, to perhaps prevent it happening in the future, whether that's putting in new regulations through ICAO about flying aircraft through war zones or whatever, what have you. It's important to have a full, thorough investigation.
You know, we talk a little bit about the not having diplomatic relations. Would having them have made a difference in terms of trying to get answers?
I don't think it would have much of a difference in terms of getting answers. I mean, we would know better the people involved, but again, the Iranians will clamp down on the information. But what it would have done would have given us immediate access, or as immediate as possible, to the site, to the remains, to deal with the families that come in. So being on the ground would have helped in the bureaucratic sense in that regard. But in terms of getting answers, I don't think so, because I don't think anybody's going to get full.
One last thought briefly. If this crash did happen because of an accidental missile strike, how will that be perceived or talked about in Iran?
The Iranians I don't think they'll ever admit it. The Iranians are plugged into the internet. There'll be rumors and discussions about all of this, and I think we've already seen the Iranians talk about this as a big conspiracy theory to try and undercut Iran's reputation. But it's something the Iranians will keep very close and likely never admit.
Okay, Dennis Horak, thanks very much.
You're welcome.
So clearly this is a very complex story, so we want to know what you want to know. Send us your questions, please, to thenational@cbc.ca or message us on Instagram @CBCTheNational. We'll put those questions to our panel of experts tomorrow night.
And we do have more special coverage to come tonight, including at issue on the diplomatic challenge ahead for the government.
And later, we sit down with those who knew the passengers of Flight 752 as they share the memories of their friends.
No one ever had anything wrong to say about her because she was just a very kind, soft person.
She had these big eyes, these really big eyes with the longest eyelashes.
Parinaz's personality was very bold, courageous, generous, warm, and positive.
Just a little over a day after the tragic crash of Flight 752, a new message from Ottawa.
We have intelligence from multiple sources, including our allies and our own intelligence. The evidence indicates that the plane was shot down by an Iranian surface-to-air missile.
The government is calling for a full investigation and answers from Iran, a country Canada has no diplomatic ties with.
The first communication we had with the state of Iran was yesterday night.
So, how does this new information change the government's response? And how does it navigate this complicated situation?
So let's bring in At Issue to answer some of those questions. Chantal Hébert is in Montreal, Andrew Coyne is in Toronto, and Althea Raj also in Montreal tonight. Good to see you all. These are such complicated issues for governments, but they can also be really defining issues for prime ministers and for leaders. So let's talk about some of the initial response we've seen from the government and from the prime minister in particular. Chantal, what have you made in terms of, I guess, particularly today with the evidence that the plane seems to have been shot down, in terms of how they've handled it?
I think the government did not have much of a choice and made the best choice, which was to send back the Prime Minister to the microphones to confirm what was being confirmed left, right, and center by the time he showed up on various networks by the US President. So the one choice was to try to say nothing while all this was happening, which doesn't sound like a palatable option, in the hope that this would keep doors open for sending inspectors and consular help to Iran, or to come clean with as much information as the country had. It's quite extraordinary for a prime minister in a news conference to use intelligence to say what Justin Trudeau said, and you have to think that it means that the government is confident that this information is solid.
Yeah, and the difficulty around, or I guess the carefulness with which he spoke, Andrew, speaks to the fact that, as Chantal said, he still wants people to get in there. He wants consular officials, he wants TSB officials to be able to get in there.
Yeah, we have no particular leverage over Iran. Clearly something terrible has been done here, whether it was intentional or not. If it was simply reckless and culpable in that regard, then someone has to answer for that. But the only way in which we can call anybody to account or even have a hope of doing that is if we can get all the facts and find out exactly what happened. He's in a position, unfortunately, of having to ask Iran and maybe appeal to the moral conscience of the international community to put pressure on Iran to do the right thing here, when their every instinct, as we've seen, is going to be to cover up and lie about this.
Althea, what did you make of how the government responded, more particularly today, when they sort of finally had to say, we have enough evidence for us to conclude this?
I don't know if it was surprising, but it was nice to see that the government was being transparent. I mean, so far we've seen them be, I think, transparent, cautious, collaborative. The Prime Minister has been on the phone with his counterparts, and also trying to create a little bit of distance between himself and the US President, Donald Trump. It was surprising to hear him say that he thinks, well, the government believes that the plane was shot down by Iranian surface-to-air missiles, but I think that means that we probably will have more information as the days and weeks go on. At the same time, though, you do get a sense that the government wants to believe that this was an accident. Yeah. You heard the Prime Minister say that. You heard the Foreign Affairs Minister suggest, well, it could have been an accident. Everybody seems to want to believe that it was an accident, because I think they don't know what they would do if it wasn't.
Yeah, well, but the other thing is that before you go down the road of it's not an accident, no amount of examination of the plane will prove or disprove, because it goes to intent. you have to ask yourself about motive. And one of the reasons the Iran government has scrambled to say this hasn't happened and somehow lost in the shuffle of this tragedy is that a number of the people who died are Iranian nationals who were killed by their own government by accident or by design. And that is not something that the government that has just managed to mobilize public opinion behind it over the past few days wants to own up to in a hurry.
But to Rosie's point, I think that the fact that now you're seeing the government of Iran pushing back and saying, well, if you think that that's the conclusion, then show us the intelligence, that it's hard. It squeezes the government because the government is still like, we want to get consular officials in there. There are things that we were hoping to engage with. And at the same time, if you're going to be transparent with people, then that impacts your ability perhaps to help, grieving families.
I want to play a clip of my colleague David Cochran trying to press the Prime Minister on the fact that this chain of events started because of the United States.
How much responsibility does the United States bear for this tragedy?
The evidence suggests that this is the likely cause, but we need to have a full and complete and credible investigation to establish exactly what happened.
Andrew, your thoughts on that? Because we have, as you said before, virtually no leverage with Iran, and now we're in a very strange position with the United States as well.
Yeah, I mean, there's a context to this. I'm not going to weep any tears for taking out somebody who was responsible for the deaths of thousands of people. Right. But I would like to think, and I would have wanted to have thought, that the President of the United States would have have thought this through to some extent, had some kind of strategic vision, had weighed the costs and the consequences, had the tactical dexterity to deal with events that arose from it. You can't have any confidence in this. Instead, what you have is what appears to have been the usual mixture of pique and public relations and everything else that went into this decision, with no thought to the consequences. And in that context, I think you can, while the primary responsibility has to rest with Iran and whoever made the decisions in Iran connected with this, I do think the President of the United States does share some of the responsibility, and it points to the larger context, which is our military and other kinds of relationships with the United States are predicated on the idea that there'll be some kind of responsible leadership in the White House. If we cannot have that confidence, if we have this kind of bull in a china shop there, then that has to cause us to rethink a lot of our relationships with the United States in this regard.
Chantal?
Regardless of the state of our relationship with the U.S., what happened to that plane would have happened. It didn't happen because we're allies of the United States. That would be very hard to fathom, given that for the most part, Iran lost its own citizens in the process. Yeah. So it actually proves no point. But I don't think that the Prime Minister needs to apportion blame to Donald Trump, because I think Canadian public opinion will do it without any help from the Prime Minister.
Althea? I don't know if I can agree with Chantal on that, because we don't know why this happened or who's responsible. And so far we have seen that our relationship with the White House, we're being squeezed on China, and now possibly we're being squeezed with the U.S. fighting with Iran. And I think questions have to be asked about collateral damage in Canada's relationship with the White House.
I have 2 minutes left, but I do want to touch on the one thing that sort of struck me from the press conference, and that is the enormous amount of reach out that the Prime Minister has done over the past 48 hours to world leaders for advice, for help, to try and get into Iran. I mean, make of it what you will, but to me it seemed like an admission that he knows what he doesn't know at this stage in his job, and is willing to admit that in some ways. Maybe I'm going too far, but let me get your take on that, Chantal.
I don't think that he knows what he doesn't know, but he knows what he doesn't have. That is consular presence, boots on the ground, diplomatic relationships with Iran. On the other hand, it does help that Canada has a really good relationship with the Ukraine. I see it more as a way to avoid having Donald Trump giving the lead on all of this in as much as possible, and a kind of a disavowal of confidence in the U.S. leadership.
Andrew, am I giving him too much credit there? Or?
No, I would agree with the last point in particular. That this is going to have to be the modus operandi in a lot of these issues going forward. Is We just don't have the kind of U.S. leadership we would have had in the past. It's going to have to be our NATO partners, our other allies, working in concert with them and basically working around the United States.
Althea.
Canada doesn't want to stand alone, and I think that's what it will come down to. Whatever the results of the investigation are, we've heard Donald Trump suggest as well that he thinks this is an accident. But if the Netherlands, the European Commission, the UK believe that it was not an accident, and Canada does too, then we will be relying on partners to help back us up. And I think that you're seeing kind of, now that Asmaka is done, kind of the Trudeau Liberals moving back towards perhaps more traditional simpatico allies.
Okay, I'm going to leave it there, everybody. A tough topic, but really important to talk the politics and the policy on a day like this. Thank you all. Before we go, be sure to subscribe to At Issue, the podcast, for extra content. Look for it on any major podcast app and on our website, cbcnews.ca/thenational.
And we are also following other news tonight, including a new evacuation order in Australia.
But first, we sit down with friends and colleagues of some of the passengers of Flight 752. As we go to break, more of their faces and names. Each of these faces represents ambitions, senses of humor, joys, sorrows, and all the memories that live on in those who knew them.
The National spoke to 3 people, 2 colleagues and a friend, each touched by lives lost on that flight and each putting a story to the faces of those they held dear.
My name is Mehrdad Aryanejad, and I'm friends with Parinaz and Iman Ghadarpana. Parinaz and Iman were a young couple who were deeply in love. They were passionate about life. I can describe them as a very happy couple. They wanted to let the world know they have an ancient culture that they would like to share with the world. Both of them were really positive, and in any meetings or gathering where Parinaz was present, you could tell that she actually gives everybody energy, and she was very kind.
My name is Dolores, and Sahar and I were colleagues. We worked together for 5 years. So we were in touch every day, for one reason or another. I think of her almost like a younger sister, because she was very young and bright and vibrant and sharp and witty and funny. She had these big eyes, these really big eyes with the longest eyelashes. And she was always so well put together, fashionably coordinated. And we used to make fun, friendly fun, because she will always wear high heels. And we knew it was a hard coming because she would take her way into the office. So she went to Iran on a family vacation, and she left at the beginning of December, so this was a big event, and they all went together, but they didn't come back together. It's just too difficult to comprehend such loss.
My name is Daryl King. I was Susan's boss and friend, co-worker. Susan was a young lady. She looked after herself, nice husband. She had a 14-year-old stepson from him. In fact, he doesn't even know about that she's been passed away. Susan was sort of shy. She would be there to help. You know, being a personal trainer and a nutritionist means you're a caring person most times out of not. And you know, now to be a realtor, which was now her chosen field, you're always out there to help other people. She was a nice person to be around. I mean, and she wanted to learn. She was just at that level now, just ready to like really expand her wings and fly.
Communities across the country are gathering tonight to mourn and to pay tribute. We're going to hear from them in tonight's moment.
But first, the day's other news, including the fallout behind the scenes at Buckingham Palace after Prince Harry and Meghan revealed their intention to step aside. Welcome back. The Queen has reportedly asked Buckingham Palace staff to find a workable solution after yesterday's surprise announcement from Prince Harry and Meghan. They say they will step back from their roles as senior royals and spend more time in North America. Sounds like a plan. But as Deanna Sumanak-Johnson reports, it's not quite that simple.
At the Madame Tussauds Wax Museum, where they once stood together, they now stand apart. On the streets of England, reactions were strong.
Oh, I'm quite disappointed, yeah. I mean, you don't see William and Kate doing this, do you?
It's very disrespectful, and also you can't be halfway in, halfway out.
But in Canada, the country heavily rumored as the place Prince Harry and Meghan would like to live, the reception is notably warmer.
Especially if they choose to make their home in Vancouver Island or in Victoria, they will be able to escape a lot of the celebrity culture and a lot of the paparazzi culture that exists in places like London. So I think this is a really good opportunity for them.
On social media, other Canadians, even those who said they liked the young royals, expressed worry about the so-called Megxit, specifically that Canadian taxpayers would have to foot the bill if they were to live here. Royal historian Carolyn Harris urges people not to get too excited or too alarmed just yet.
Well, even if Harry and Meghan stop receiving money from the sovereign grant, that does not mean they would be arriving in Canada or anywhere else without resources. Harry has inherited money from his mother, Diana, Princess of Wales, from his great-grandmother, Queen Elizabeth, the Queen Mother.
And any jobs they might find would be heavily scrutinized.
If they start endorsing products, for instance, they will be seen as cashing in on their royal connections.
In other words, there are complicated issues that will take time to work through, to quote the tersely worded statement from the palace yesterday. Today, a royal source said that the Queen, Prince Charles, and Prince William all have teams dedicated to finding workable solutions that would satisfy Prince Harry and Meghan's desire for independence, and that they were aiming to come up with a solution in days rather than weeks. Deanna Sumanak-Johnson, CBC News, Toronto.
Okay, among the other stories making headlines around the world tonight, British MPs have given their final backing to the bill that will allow the country to leave the European Union.
The ayes to the right, 330. The noes to the left, 231.
An overwhelming victory for Prime Minister Boris Johnson. It means leaving the EU on January 31st, some 10 months after it was originally scheduled to. In Australia, authorities are urging another mass evacuation as fires are once again building to threatening levels.
We have every reason to believe there will be significant fire activity over the next 48 hours.
A forecast of high temperatures and strong winds has officials urging people in parts of the heavily populated southeast to leave their homes or risk being trapped. 27 people have died since September, and more than 10 million hectares of land have been razed by fire. And nearly two-thirds of Puerto Rico remains without power tonight, more than 48 hours after the Caribbean island was struck by the most powerful earthquake it has seen in more than a century. At least one person died and 300 homes were destroyed after a 6.4 magnitude quake and a 6.0 aftershock on Tuesday. Officials say damage to one of the largest power plants on the island could take a year to repair.
Next on The National, our moment. We return to the vigils happening across the country tonight, where Canadians are standing in sorrow together. Tonight, we go back to communities in mourning. Canadians gathering across the country, still in shock, just starting on the long path of grief. Grief is so lonely, but tonight was about being together. Family and friends, and some strangers too, on campuses, in churches, and on Parliament Hill.
Each touched in some way by this nightmare. We'll leave you now with their acts of remembrance. Tonight's moment. Good night.
to the family members who are with us today. Your depth of loss is unthinkable for many of us.
I didn't expect more than 100, 150 people coming here, gathering at this freezing, weather. It shows the support, shows the unity of the communities.
It's a very, very sad moment for all of us. Everybody is somehow affected.
It's really important for the community to come together and to rally around one another, and not only around the Iranian Canadian community, but around other Canadians that are also here today.
There's nothing different between that family and me, nothing.
I still cannot believe this beautiful life, innocent life, they are gone like that.
Doesn't matter, Iranian, Canadian, Ukrainian, Swedish, any, we gather here in solidarity to show our love.